Hi, it's been a busy couple of weeks here, and I've got a few things I need to unwrap. I'm not even sure where all this is from. Japan. I don't know what I was getting shipped in from Japan. That's actually odd. This stuff should have all come 4/2/2020, so it looks like it shipped out a little bit later, and it also didn't get here for quite some time, 2 months from the look of it. So I'm not even sure what's in these. Maybe something interesting. Also received in a lot of parts from China. Not sure what's going to be in there either. Oh, there's one. Okay, so this is obviously 16x2 character LCDs, HD 44780. They're a pretty good price. If I remember right, these were just over $1 each, and I needed some for a project, so bought a 10-pack of that so I'd have some on the shelf. So I'd have some sitting around next time I need to do a project with the 16x2 character. Oh, 16x1? 16x2 character LCDs. They're just handy to have around. Alright, let's see what's in all these packages. Oh, ha! That it was ordered a long time ago. I needed a Japanese cart to test out, although, as it turns out, the Game Boy carts aren't actually Japanese or region locked, so it doesn't really matter. But Rockman World 5, I kind of wanted a Mega Man cart to test out some of the Game Boys, and here it is. That looks cool. We'll have to fire that up and see what it does. And here we are with just stacks of 16x2 display controllers. These are useful for projects if you're working with an Arduino or I suppose even a ARM device of some sort, and it's got GPIO pins. You can route some output to one of these, and usually with these I actually use a potentiometer for a dial knob for menu selection if you're doing some kind of menuing system, or you can just use a static display displaying temperature, whatever you need to on the display, and these get the job done nicely, and they're relatively simple to code to, lots of libraries available for them. Other people have done most of the hard work for you already, so you don't need to go poking through the electronics to figure out how to actually send stuff down to them. What's the model on that? HD 44780 is the controller on those, and they're usually listed as just 1602 or 16x2 displays, LCDs. Oh, nice. These are Sidemount Momentary push buttons. There were a bunch of joysticks that use this type of push button, so I ordered some in for my parts bin. Those will come in handy. Yep, just an assortment. And these are just assorted depth sizes, so let me show you the difference there. Sometimes you need different depth sizes with them depending on how the trigger mechanism on your mouse, joystick, the, I don't know, self-designed, whatever, is going to be. So if you can see there, so I bought 3 different sizes. They have different heights for the button, which is important. Depending on what you're using them on, you'll need a different button height in order to mate up with whatever the controller or button you're pressing in is, or whatever your own application is. It's useful to have a handful of these with the surface mount and the side mount style, so that whatever you're doing, you can actually just set up the appropriate button. And another parts bin from China. This looks like it's got something right next to the edge, so I will carefully tear it open rather than cut through whatever I'm receiving in. Wires. What do we have here? What do we have here? Well, those certainly look weird. Those solar panels? Those are solar panels on PCBs that are a little scratched up, if you can see that. And the soldering on these doesn't look great either. The soldering's still smudged. Oh, there we go. Soldering's not attached. So these were just project PCBs, 5 volts. Wow, and they still have a lot of rosin core flux all over them. Like I was saying, these are 5 volt PCBs for projects. I just needed something that would put out a small amount of amperage at 5 volts for running through a charging core for a lithium cell, a charging IC for a lithium cell rather, or something similar. And these should do the trick if, well, as you can see, if they actually work. They were inexpensive, I'll give them that. So we'll wire one of those up, I guess, and see if that actually works. Alright, aside from the horrible workmanship, let's see if these solar panels actually do their thing. Let's see, yellow to hot, brown to ground, and yeah, look, 1.7, and we'll put a light on it, 2.0, 1.7, yeah, they should actually put out something anyway. We'll have to see in sunlight if they put out 5 volt, but they do put out some voltage, so they should be useful. Cool. And here's another small package from China. This one isn't quite to the edge anymore, so yeah, I'll just tear it open on top. Probably safer that way. Oh, that one's already... Oh, and there we are. Oh, actually this goes with one of the other packages of stuff I've got here. So these are Greenlee AVR clone chips. They are LGT8F328P on a board with a boot sector already burned to them, which is important because these are the chip version of those. So as you can see, I've got LQFP32 and SSOP20 for those. And the problem I was having is these don't have a bootloader burned to them. So I was running into an issue with those where I couldn't actually figure out how to get them working as a replacement for the AVRs. The little USB models that are a clone of the Arduino already have the bootloader burned onto them, so they work okay, but I was just having a heck of a time getting the bare chips working. So instead of worrying about it too much, since I couldn't really find any good information on them online, what I did is I ordered up a couple of the pre-made boards, and I figured that would give me some indication of how to wire them. It'll let me know what the pinouts are supposed to be, and I can play around with the 2 of those and probably figure out how to burn a new bootloader onto there. 10 UF capacitors. Surface mount. 0805? 0805. Good. Those are just standard surface mount capacitors. They're useful for a variety of different projects. Having a basic, all the basic values of resistor and capacitor sitting behind you is kind of useful when you're building up circuit boards. That way you can just reach back and grab whatever it is you need to try to make things work or build something up, and then you can order in more specific parts if you're going to do a production run of something. This was another one that I ordered a few months ago and just coming in now. Wonder Swans were surprisingly cheap to ship from Japan, rather, for a little while, so I ordered a few of them in to play around with. There's the Wonder Swan in all of its glory. It's actually in pretty good shape. The problem I found on most of these was just a little bit of screen burn-in, and you can replace the filter on the screen and that cleans it right up. It wasn't actually much of an issue. I still have to get around to doing the filter replacement on the ones I have, but the Wonder Swan chassis themselves, like this one, were just remarkably clean, and they booted up okay. There wasn't any issue with the machines themselves, just a little bit of screen burn-in, which was surprising. But I'm guessing whoever was selling them just wanted to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Alright, we're just going to pop a Nizen rechargeable in the core here. And take a quick look. There we go. So it's got the icon in the corner. That's already on. And that's powering up just fine. So you can see some small icons on the bottom. That was audio. That's just the sound on off. And it's working okay. If I got a cartridge, it would probably come up just fine. I don't see any problem visually with the screen now. Normally there'd be some indication if it wasn't going to be working okay, so probably just fine. The other reason I use the nickel zinc rechargeable batteries in these instead of using an alkaline when I'm testing them out is if I leave the battery in, the rechargeable batteries don't tend to leak like alkalines do if they're nickel zinc or nickel metal hydride. The nickel zincs are hard to find, but they do have some good characteristics. The nominal voltage on these is 1.6 volts instead of the 1.4 or a little bit less on the nickel metal hydrides. So I do like using those for the electronics. There's some downsides to them. They don't work quite as well in regards to discharging with multiple cells, they tend to discharge unevenly between the cells. I think they feed on one another. And what you end up with is one of the cells will go completely flat and the other ones will still be holding something of a charge. And they tend to discharge a bit lower than some of the other cells if there's no circuitry involved that prevents them from doing that. So they do have some odd characteristics. On the other hand, if they do discharge completely and the charger doesn't like to charge them, just blitzing them with a voltage sometimes brings them right back. So I haven't lost too many of them. Well, that's a powder. Sodium perchlorate? Sodium perbisulfate? I can't remember. Let's see here. Sodium percarbonate, right. This is used for working with hydrogen peroxide. So you really don't want to get this on your eyes or anywhere around moisture, but it's really useful for creating some hydrogen peroxide, and I'm going to be using it for RetroBrighting because, as you can see, my Commodore 128, among other things, has some fairly horrible keys. 20 years later, when I got it out of the shed, yeah, it's gotten a little iffy on some of the keys. Weirdly, you can see which keys weren't produced with the same batch, because those are all fine. Also, they're the wider keys, so I'm assuming either somebody else made them or they're just a different plastic. Those made out just fine. The other ones are all completely yellowed, and although that's kind of a interesting look, I'd rather have them back to normal. So hopefully this will help me with that. I hadn't seen anybody try it. I'm sure somebody has, but I hadn't seen anybody try it on YouTube when I looked, so I'm going to be trying to use this to RetroBright some of my electronics. We'll see how that goes later. Huh, so if that was the sodium, I'm not sure what this is. Alright, that looks like an Apple floppy drive. I do have a bunch of old Apples that I was working on, trying to make sure they actually work okay, and this should help with that. So, much like the Commodore 64 tape drive last time, this is an Apple 5 1/4 floppy drive. KLB8164 serial number, model A9M0107. It looks like it's in good shape. Anyway, we'll have to see if it works, but if not, I'll be repairing it. It's still all together, a little loose. Plastic's okay. Not breaking anywhere, which is nice on old Apple products. They do tend to blow apart. The UV damage over time just does a number on them. And here, this is a neat piece of hardware. So we had some CRT monitors that were causing a problem, and this is to fix those. This is a CRT Tube Tester and... oh, whoop. That's a weird latch. It's a CRT Tube Tester and repair kit. It can heat up the CRT tube and restore it somewhat. Came with all the instruction set. The cover was popped off when I opened this one up. Haven't actually had a chance to use it yet. I need to build a different adapter out for it for a modern-ish CRT tube. I'll be working on that shortly. It might not get its own video just because I mean, I don't think too many people are going to be using a B&K Model 465 or similar CRT tester, but maybe. If I have to make a custom 3D printed model and it works well for the adapter, then I'll publish it and probably put a quick video up of using it just to give you an idea of how that works in case you're interested. And then some local purchases. There's a... actually, I don't even know what this is. Let's see, where's the power on this thing? Oh, interesting. So this is another Nintendo on chip console, and it looks like it's got Sim and Nintendo. Maybe I'll take this apart and show you quick the insides of it. Now that's a neat feature. Looking inside this, they've got an option for 3 AAA batteries or a Sony BL-5C style lithium-ion cell, which is kind of cool. I've seen these with either or before, but I hadn't seen one that just has both in it as an option. I'm assuming they're both wired up, but we'll find out in just a second. And there's a little speaker, start switch, oh nope, input power. Yep, they're both wired up, so you could use either or. I don't even know if I want to take this off, but I do want to see what's under here. Here goes nothing. These things are always a pain to get back together. The construction on them is so fiddly and everything is so poorly fitted together that they're... I almost hesitate to say that I've never actually got the ultra cheap game systems, just the handheld game systems like this, back together again entirely properly. I'm sure I'm exaggerating, but these things are a pain with their weird little chiclet keyboards and ultra cheap design. There we go. Let's see what's inside this. If I can just take it off without pulling up everything, hopefully. Oh man, oh, it's a real screen. It's not on any kind of funky connector, it's just a ribbon cable. That's soldered down. The soldering doesn't look too great on there. Let's zoom in a little bit and see what we've got here. Alright, so a standard board. I'm not sure what the resolution is on it from the markings, but this is just a standard LCD on a ribbon cable. Solder down. Soldering job is meh, but functional. And there's a bare minimum of circuitry on here, although there are some supporting chips. Let's see what those are. Windbound memory. Who knows? ATM. And that one looks like it's completely unmarked. A mystery 8-pin IC. Yep, that's not just trickle of light, that IC is completely unmarked. And then we have got a blob for the system processor that's just wired directly into all of these pins. No real breakouts. Oh, we do have some breakout pins hidden behind here, so if there's something funky about this, I can always tear this pad off and see what these breakout pins do if I have a minute. There's one over there too. Although I'll have to trace them back. They might just be test pins for the pads or something like that, depending on what they're used for. That's it. Clean enough little board. Not too bad. But I don't know how much I'll be able to make it do. Now I'm going to try to get this back together without completely destroying it. Also, some other weird little console. I'll probably just rip that apart to see what's in it. The handheld solitaire game doesn't have too much inside. It's just a basic blob on chip wired directly to the circuit board with no casing. A bunch of support componentry, resistors, capacitors, some voltage regulation, a diode, switches, piezo speaker, and a display with the usual press down connection fits. It's just the silicone pads, conductive. And that's it. Not much to these things anymore. There's probably not that much interest in producing them. I'm not sure who buys them these days. I don't know if anybody does. They're marked 2008, this one was, so that's probably the last time they were actually useful in being sold. Oh, the buttons are actually pretty good quality. And so is the circuit board, for that matter. That's nicely put together without too much blobbing anywhere, and doesn't look half bad. The traces are all holding up okay. A couple of Xbox 360 power supplies. These are useful. So these come in handy because they put out 14.2 amps at 12 volts. So if you've got a 3D printer or something that just uses a massive, probably an older 3D printer at this point, they usually moved over to 12 volt systems or 24 volt systems these days. But if you've got an older 3D printer that just uses 12 volt, these will certainly put out enough 12 volt to handle any of them, whatever the wiring is. And that one powers up. Also has 5 volt on here, I think. Yep, 5 volt and 1 amp. So a little bit of 5 volt too if you need that for something, mixed with a massive 12 volt output. And they both show orange, so that's the standby. They probably work. I'll have to actually put a full load on them and see what they're up to, but oh, this one has vents and this one didn't. I wonder if there's a flaw. This is probably an earlier model on the right here. Different model numbers. Oh, completely different model numbers. Rev A on this one, Rev 00 on this one. So I'm guessing they were manufactured at different places. Plus a completely different sticker too. Yep, different listing. This is a nicer sticker on the right, but the power supply on the left has venting, which I suspect is probably your better option for those printers. And last one. Oh, this is neat. So this is a serial multi-port controller that should, in theory, work with any Linux after 2.6, say 2.624 or so. It'll give you the ability to put out 8 serial ports on a single USB port. I'm assuming they probably just come up with some weird device ID under Linux, since it's not a standard serial device, but instead a RocketPort 3 proprietary controller that they've written in support for. So that should be neat to check out. So for instance, if I wanted to do 8 serial ports off of my terminal for some reason, I could plug it into the USB and you'd have 8 old school serial ports off of a single brand new terminal, which can be useful for different stuff. Basically testing out serial devices or just running things over them, motor control possibly. All right, and I think that's it for the workbench today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.